I'm 97 years old, and for more than 50 years I've carried a secret no one would believe even if they begged me to prove it. Between 1973 and 1998, up in the Cascade Mountains, I met the same Bigfoot at my cabin again and again, long enough for him to show me things about humanity I wish I didn't know. This is the truth I've avoided telling my entire life and why I can't hold it in anymore. My name is Earl Whitaker. In 1973, I was 45 years old and freshly widowed. Martha had died that spring from breast cancer, and I couldn't stand being in our house in Bellingham anymore. Everything reminded me of her. The kitchen, where she'd bake bread on Sunday mornings, the porch where we'd drink coffee and watch the sunrise, even the damn wallpaper she'd picked out in '68. So I did what any broken man does. I ran away. I had a small inheritance from Martha's family and some savings from my years working at the lumber mill. I bought a piece of land about 40 miles east of Concrete, Washington, 60 acres of dense forest, with a creek running through it. The previous owner had built a small cabin back in the 50s, nothing fancy. One bedroom, a main room with a wood stove, an outhouse, and a hand pump for water. No electricity, no phone line. It was exactly what I needed. I moved in during July of '73, driving up in my '68 Ford F-100 with everything I owned packed in the bed. My supplies were simple: canned goods, a kerosene lamp, some tools, my hunting rifle, and a transistor radio so I could catch the news and baseball games. The cabin sat in a small clearing surrounded by Douglas firs and western hemlocks that stretched up like cathedral columns. The nearest neighbor was 8 miles away. For the first 2 months, I saw nothing unusual. I spent my days chopping wood, repairing the cabin's roof, and trying to figure out how to live with the silence. Martha and I had been married for 23 years. The quiet was like a physical weight. Then came September 17th, 1973. I remember the date because it was a Monday, and Howard Cosell had been talking about the Billie Jean King match on the radio the night before. I woke up around dawn to a sound I'd never heard, a low, guttural moaning coming from somewhere near the creek, maybe 200 yards from the cabin. I grabbed my rifle and went to investigate. The morning fog was thick, rolling through the trees like smoke. I followed the sound, my boots crunching on the forest floor, and that's when I saw it. At first, I thought it was a bear. It was lying on its side near the creek bank, partially hidden by ferns. But as I got closer, maybe 30 feet away, I realized this was no bear. The thing was massive, easily 7 feet tall, even lying down, covered in dark, reddish-brown hair. Its shoulders were impossibly broad, and one of its legs was twisted at an unnatural angle. It saw me and tried to get up, but collapsed with a sound that was almost human, a groan of pain and frustration. That's when I got my first clear look at its face. I've thought about that moment every day for 52 years. The face wasn't quite ape, wasn't quite human. The eyes were deep-set and dark, with an intelligence that froze me in place. It wasn't looking at me like an animal looks at a potential threat. It was studying me, calculating, deciding what I was going to do. My rifle was already raised, finger on the trigger. This was 1973. There wasn't any internet, no Bigfoot documentaries on TV. I knew about the Patterson-Gimlin film from '67, had seen it in a magazine once, but most people thought it was a hoax. Standing there looking at this creature bleeding onto the moss, I knew Roger Patterson had been telling the truth. The creature made a sound, not aggressive, more like a question. It gestured weakly toward its injured leg with one massive hand. 5 fingers, I noted, long, thick fingers that could probably crush my skull without effort. I lowered the rifle. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was the loneliness. Maybe it was something in those eyes. But I went back to the cabin, grabbed my first aid kit and some old towels, and returned to the creek. The creature watched me approach, its breath coming in short, painful gasps. I'm no doctor, but I'd seen enough injuries at the mill to know a bad break when I saw one. The lower leg bone, the tibia, I think, was fractured, probably from a fall. I had no way to set it properly, but I could clean the wound and try to stabilize it. For the next hour, I worked while this 7-foot creature lay perfectly still, allowing me to touch it. Its hair was coarser than I expected, more like thick wire than fur. The skin underneath was dark gray, almost black. When I poured hydrogen peroxide on the wound, it growled low in its throat but didn't pull away. I used 2 straight branches and some rope to make a crude splint, wrapping it as tight as I dared. The creature watched my hands the entire time, those dark eyes tracking every movement. When I finished, I backed away slowly. The creature sat up, a movement that took obvious effort, and looked down at its leg, then back at me. It made a sound I can only describe as acknowledgement, not quite a grunt, not quite a word. Then it stood, balancing on one leg, and hobbled into the forest, using trees for support. I didn't expect to see it again. But 3 days later, I found a freshly killed rabbit on my porch. No note, no explanation, just a rabbit, cleanly killed, still warm. I looked out into the tree line and saw nothing, but I knew it was watching. That was how it started. Over the next 2 years, the pattern continued. I'd leave food scraps at the edge of the clearing, apple cores, bread crusts, leftover beans. They'd be gone by morning. Sometimes I'd find things in return. Fish from the creek, wild mushrooms, once a whole deer haunch that kept me fed for 2 weeks. I never saw the creature clearly during those first years, just glimpses, a shape moving between trees at dusk, a massive silhouette against the moonlight, the sound of something large moving through the underbrush. But I knew it was there watching, learning about me the same way I was trying to understand it. In the spring of '75, I was splitting wood behind the cabin when I felt that familiar sensation, the weight of being observed. I turned slowly, and there it was, standing at the edge of the clearing, maybe 60 feet away, in full daylight. It was taller than I'd realized during our first encounter. I'd estimate 7.5 feet, maybe more. The injured leg had healed, though it still favored the other one slightly. Its face was weathered, with silver gray hair mixed into the reddish brown around its muzzle and chest. We stared at each other for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 2 or 3 minutes. Then I did something crazy. I raised my hand in a wave. The creature tilted its head, considering this gesture. Then, slowly, deliberately, it raised its own massive hand and mimicked the movement. That's when I knew this was going to be something bigger than I'd ever imagined. By 1976, the creature and I had developed what I can only call a routine. Not quite a friendship, that word implies too much familiarity, but a careful, mutual understanding. It would appear every few weeks, always at dusk or dawn, always keeping a respectful distance. I started calling it August in my mind, because that's when our arrangement truly began to solidify. That summer, I bought a Polaroid one-step camera at a hardware store in Concrete. The clerk, a kid maybe 20 years old with feathered hair like Sean Cassidy, rang it up while humming along to Afternoon Delight on the store radio. I told him I wanted to photograph wildlife. He said I should try the new Kodak instead, better for nature shots. I stuck with the Polaroid. Something told me I'd need instant proof of what I was seeing, even if I never showed anyone. I never used it. Every time I thought about photographing August, something stopped me. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was fear that having proof would ruin the strange sanctuary we'd built. The Patterson film had brought Roger nothing but ridicule and conspiracy theories. I didn't need that kind of attention. Instead, I started keeping a journal, green canvas-covered notebook, bought at the same hardware store. I documented everything, dates, times, behaviors, observations. I still have those journals, 12 of them now, stacked in a box under my bed. August's intelligence became more apparent with each encounter. In September of '76, I was working on replacing some rotted boards on the cabin's front steps. I'd set my hammer down to measure a piece of wood, and when I turned back, the hammer was gone. I looked up to see August standing 30 feet away, holding the hammer, examining it with the kind of focused curiosity a child shows when handed something new. I held out my hand, palm up. August studied me for a long moment, then walked forward, closer than it had ever come, and placed the hammer in my hand. Its palm was rough, calloused, like someone who'd worked hard labor their whole life. The fingers were warm. We stood there, maybe 10 feet apart, and I got my first real look at its face in clear light. The eyes were more human than ape, deep brown with flecks of amber, set under a prominent brow ridge. The nose was broad and flat, the lips dark and expressive. There were scars on its face, old ones, the kind you accumulate over decades of living in the wild. "Thank you," I said, even though I didn't think it understood English. August made a sound, a soft rumble from deep in its chest, and touched its own chest with one finger, then pointed at me. It took me a moment to understand. It was asking my name. "Earl," I said, touching my chest. "Earl." August's mouth moved, trying to form the shape, but no sound came out that resembled speech. Instead, it made a different sound, 2 quick grunts, almost like, "Here, Earl," and touched its chest again. I understood. It was giving me permission to name it, or perhaps telling me it already had a name I couldn't pronounce. Either way, August stuck. The late 70s were strange years for America. Nixon had resigned in '74, Carter was president now, and everyone seemed uncertain about everything. Gas prices were through the roof. I remember paying 67 cents a gallon in '78 and thinking the world was ending. I'd drive into town once a month for supplies in my Ford, listening to the Eagles and Fleetwood Mac on the 8-track player I'd installed. But up in the mountains, time moved differently. August and I existed in a bubble separate from disco and the Cold War and the Iranian hostage crisis. We were building our own language, our own understanding. By 1978, August would sometimes sit on the far side of the clearing while I worked. Just sit, watching, sometimes for hours. I'd talk to it, about Martha mostly, about the life I'd left behind, about loneliness. I don't think August understood the words, but it seemed to understand the meaning behind them. Sometimes it would make soft sounds in response, almost like it was trying to comfort me. That's when I started noticing the first lesson. One afternoon in June of '79, I was trying to fix my chainsaw. I'd been at it for 2 hours, getting more and more frustrated, cursing and throwing tools. August was sitting at its usual spot, watching. When I finally gave up and stomped back toward the cabin, August stood and walked to the chainsaw. I watched as it picked up the tool I'd been using, a screwdriver, and examined it. Then it looked at the chainsaw, tilted its head, and tried the same thing I'd been attempting, removing the air filter cover, but August did it slowly, carefully, without force, and the screw turned. I walked back over. August handed me the screwdriver and stepped back. "Patience," I said aloud, understanding the lesson. "You're telling me I need patience." August made that rumbling sound again, the one I'd come to recognize as approval. Over the next year, I watched August demonstrate patience in dozens of ways. The way it would sit motionless for hours, waiting for fish in the creek. The way it would carefully extract grubs from rotting logs, never rushing, never forcing. The way it would watch the forest, reading signs I couldn't see, understanding patterns in nature that I'd spent my whole life ignoring. It was teaching me without words, and I was beginning to realize these weren't just lessons about survival, they were lessons about being human. In November of 1979, I made a mistake that almost cost me everything. I'd driven into Concrete for supplies and stopped at the tavern, the Cascade Inn, a dark little place that smelled like stale beer and cigarette smoke. I'd had a few too many Rainiers, got to talking with some locals about hunting season, and stupidly mentioned seeing something unusual on my property. "Unusual how?" asked a guy named Dale, probably mid-30s, wearing a Peterbilt cap and a denim jacket. "Just big tracks. Strange behavior in the wildlife," I backpedaled. realizing my error, but Dale's eyes lit up. Bigfoot tracks. Jesus, Earl, you serious? Word spread fast in small towns. Within a week, I had 3 trucks of hunters show up on my property, rifles ready, talking about becoming famous. I ran them off, told them I'd been drunk and making up stories. They left, but the damage was done. I'd put August in danger because I couldn't keep my mouth shut. I didn't see August for 2 months after that. December and January passed with no sign, no tracks, no gifts of food. I thought I'd lost it forever, that the noise and presence of those hunters had driven it away permanently. Then, on a February morning in 1980, I woke to find August sitting on my porch. Not near the porch, on it, maybe 6 feet from my front door. I opened the door slowly, carefully. August looked at me with those deep brown eyes, and I swear I saw something like forgiveness in them. Or maybe understanding that humans make mistakes. August reached into the thick fur on its side and pulled out something small, held it out to me. I stepped forward and took it. A smooth river stone perfectly round the size of a $50, warm from being kept close to its body. A gift, an acceptance. I sat down on the porch step and August sat beside me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from its massive body. We sat there for maybe 20 minutes, watching the sun come up through the Douglas firs, neither of us making a sound. That's when I understood the second lesson. Forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. August had every reason to disappear forever, to see humans as nothing but threats. But it chose to come back. It chose to trust again, despite everything. I cried that morning, right there on the porch. First time since Martha's funeral. August didn't move, didn't react, just sat with me while I worked through 50 years of accumulated grief. When I finally looked up, August was holding out one massive hand, palm up, an invitation. I placed my hand in its palm, and August's fingers closed gently around it. We sat like that, man and creature, both scarred, both lonely, both trying to understand what connection means, until the sun cleared the mountains. That was the moment our relationship changed from observation to something deeper. Something I still don't have the right words for, even now, 45 years later. The 80s brought change everywhere except my mountain. Reagan was president, MTV launched in '81, and suddenly everyone in concrete was wearing neon and talking about something called aerobics. I'd see it when I made my monthly supply runs. Young people with big hair and boom boxes, the world getting faster and louder. But August remained constant. By 1981, our meetings had become more frequent, sometimes twice a week. August had begun bringing me things I didn't understand at first. Arrangements of stones, carefully constructed piles of sticks, once a perfect circle of pine cones in the clearing. I documented everything in my journals, sketching the patterns, trying to decode meaning. It was my neighbor, Tom Hendricks, who accidentally helped me understand. Tom lived 8 miles west, ran a small Christmas tree farm. We'd have coffee together maybe once every few months, and in March of '82, he showed me something his daughter had made in school. An art project using found objects from nature. That's when it clicked. August wasn't leaving random arrangements, it was creating art. The next time August appeared, a cool April evening, fog rolling through the trees, I tried something new. I gathered stones from the creek and arranged them in a spiral pattern on a flat rock. Then I stepped back and waited. August emerged from the tree line, approached the stones, and studied them for several minutes. Then it looked at me, and I swear it smiled. Not a human smile, but something in the eyes, a warmth that hadn't been there before. August sat down and began rearranging the stones into a different pattern, a circle with radiating lines, like a child's drawing of the sun. When it finished, it looked at me expectantly. I laughed. I see it. It's beautiful. August made that rumbling approval sound and added one more stone to the center. That became our new form of communication, not words, but shared creation. I'd make something, August would modify it, or create a response. We were having conversations through art, through symbols neither of us fully understood but both recognized as meaningful. In July of 1982, something happened that taught me the third lesson, one that shook my understanding of human nature. I'd hiked down to Concrete for supplies and stopped at the new Safeway they'd built on Main Street. While loading groceries into my truck, I witnessed an argument between a father and his son in the parking lot. The kid was maybe 10, had knocked over a shopping cart, and the father was berating him, loud, angry, calling him stupid and clumsy. The boy was trying not to cry, apologizing over and over. I didn't intervene. None of my business, I told myself, but it bothered me the whole drive home. 2 days later, August appeared at the clearing while I was splitting wood. It watched me work for a while, then approached closer than usual, maybe 15 feet. It picked up a piece of wood I'd split poorly, jagged and uneven, and held it up to show me. Then August took another piece, one I'd split cleanly, and held them side by side. I thought it was critiquing my work, maybe showing me the difference in quality, but then August did something unexpected. It placed both pieces together carefully, gently, as if the poor cut and the good cut were equally valuable. It made a soft sound and touched its chest, then pointed to both pieces of wood. The message hit me like cold water. Both pieces were still wood. Both had value. One wasn't stupid or worthless because it wasn't perfect. "You're talking about that kid," I said aloud, even though August couldn't have known about the parking lot incident. "You're saying we're too hard on each other, too judgmental." August set the wood down and made a gesture I'd seen before, touching its eyes, then sweeping its hand toward the forest. "Look, observe, understand." I realized August had been watching humans for probably decades, maybe longer, not just me. Travelers, hunters, hikers passing through these mountains. It had observed us the way Jane Goodall observed chimps, studying our behaviors, our cruelty and kindness, our contradictions. And August had drawn conclusions. Over the next few years, August showed me more. In 1983, it led me to a spot about a mile from the cabin where someone had dumped trash, old tires, beer cans, a rusted refrigerator. August stood there, gesturing at the mess, then at the pristine forest around us. The comparison was obvious. Disgust was evident in its body language. "We're destructive," I said. "We don't respect what we have." August touched its chest again, then touched a tree trunk, then the ground. The message, "I am part of this. You are separate from it." That was lesson 4. Humans had forgotten we're part of nature, not above it. In August of 1985, I remember because We Are the World was everywhere on the radio, and I'd bought a battery-powered cassette player for the cabin. August showed me something that changed everything. It brought another creature to the clearing. I was inside making coffee when I heard an unusual sound. 2 distinct vocalizations, one I recognized as August, another higher pitched. I grabbed my rifle out of habit and looked out the window. August stood at the clearing's edge with a smaller version of itself. Not a child, this one was adult-sized, maybe 6.5 feet tall, with darker, almost black fur. Female, I guessed, though I had no real way to know. August gestured for me to come out, but slowly, carefully. I set down the rifle and stepped onto the porch with my hands visible and empty. The 2 creatures watched me. August made a series of soft sounds to its companion, communication I couldn't decipher but recognized as complex. The female remained behind August, cautious but curious. August walked forward alone, picked up a stick, and drew a simple shape in the dirt. 2 tall figures, one smaller one between them. Then August pointed at the female, at itself, and swept its hand toward the mountains. Family. August was showing me it had family. The female never came close that day. After maybe 10 minutes, she retreated into the forest. But August stayed, and I understood what had just happened. August had brought its mate, or sibling, or friend, I never knew for certain, to see me, to prove to her that not all humans were dangerous. That was lesson 5. Trust is the most precious thing any creature can offer, and betraying it destroys more than just a relationship. It destroys the possibility of connection. I never saw the female again. I don't know if she died, left, or simply chose to remain hidden. But that encounter made me realize August's loneliness probably mirrored my own. We were both isolated from our kind, both seeking something we couldn't find in our own species. By 1987, I was 59 years old. My hair had gone completely gray, my hands had developed arthritis, and I'd started wearing reading glasses from the drugstore to write in my journals. August looked older too, more silver in its fur, a slight stoop in its posture, movements a bit slower. One evening in late September, August and I sat on opposite sides of the clearing as the sun set. I was reading a week-old newspaper from Seattle, something about the stock market crash, Black Monday they called it. Everyone losing money, panicking about the future. August made a questioning sound. I looked up to find it gesturing at the newspaper, then at me, with what I can only describe as confusion. Money, I tried to explain. People are upset because they lost money. August tilted its head, clearly not understanding. I thought about how to explain it. We use these paper pieces to trade for things we need: food, shelter, tools. August stood up, walked to the edge of the forest, and returned with a freshly caught trout. It held up the fish, then gestured at the forest around us, trees, water, sky, and made a sweeping motion with its arms. The meaning was clear. Why do you need paper when everything you need is here? I couldn't answer that. I had no good answer. August set the fish down between us, a gift like always, and looked at me with something like pity. That's when I understood lesson 6, maybe the most important one. Humans had created elaborate systems of value that separated us from what actually sustains us. We'd convinced ourselves that abstract concepts like money and status were more important than food, water, shelter, connection. We'd made our lives incredibly complicated, and August couldn't understand why. Neither, sitting there in the fading light with arthritis in my hands and a decade of isolation behind me, could I? The late 80s rolled into the 90s, and the world felt like it was accelerating beyond recognition. The Berlin Wall came down in '89. I watched it on a small black and white TV I'd bought at a yard sale, powered by a car battery. The Soviet Union collapsed. The Gulf War happened. Everything was changing, shifting, the old world order dissolving. But my life remained simple. The cabin, the forest, and August. In the spring of 1990, I turned 62. My body reminded me of it constantly. Bad knees from years of labor, a persistent cough from too many winters breathing wood smoke, hearing that wasn't what it used to be. I'd started thinking about mortality in a way I hadn't since Martha died. August was aging too. I estimated it was somewhere in its 50s or 60s, though I had no real way to know. Its movements had become more deliberate, careful. The silver in its fur had spread across most of its chest and face. We were two old creatures meeting in the woods, both aware our time was limited. That awareness changed things between us. In June of 1990, August did something it had never done before. It entered the cabin. I'd left the door open on a warm afternoon, was inside organizing supplies I'd bought in town. I heard heavy footsteps on the porch and turned to see August's massive frame filling the doorway, having to duck to avoid hitting its head on the frame. We stared at each other. This was a boundary we'd never crossed. The cabin was my space. The forest was August's. But now August was standing in my kitchen, looking around with obvious curiosity. It approached my small table, where I'd been sorting through old photographs, pictures of Martha, my parents, our wedding day in 1950. August picked up the wedding photo carefully, holding it in its enormous hands, studying Martha's face with intense focus. That's Martha, I said quietly. My wife. She died a long time ago. August looked from the photo to me, back to the photo. Then it did something that still brings tears to my eyes when I think about it. August touched Martha's face in the photograph with one finger, gentle, reverent, then touched my face the same way. The gesture was unmistakable. It understood loss. It understood grief. It was telling me it knew what I'd been carrying all these years. I broke down, sat right there at my kitchen table and sobbed, while this creature that most people thought was a myth stood beside me, one massive hand resting lightly on my shoulder. When I finally composed myself, August carefully placed the photograph back on the table and picked up another one, a picture of me and 3 other men at the lumber mill, circa 1968. August studied it, paying particular attention to how close we were standing, arms around each other's shoulders, all of us laughing. Then August made a sound I'd never heard before, something between a sigh and a question, and gestured at the forest, then back at itself, alone. You miss them too, I said. Your family, your people. August's response was to gather all the photographs showing me with other people and arrange them in a line on the table. Then it pointed at each person, then at the empty cabin around us, and finally at itself in the forest. Lesson 7 hit me hard. Humans need each other, but we keep choosing isolation. We build walls, create distance, convince ourselves we're better off alone. But we're not. We're dying inside, just like August was, just like I was. We were both living proof that isolation, even chosen isolation, was a kind of slow death. After that day, August came inside the cabin regularly, not every visit, but often enough that I started keeping a chair by the door that could support its weight, a sturdy bench I'd reinforced with extra lumber. We'd sit together in the main room, August examining my books, my tools, my radio with fascination. In November of 1991, I bought a Polaroid camera in town, a newer model, the Spectra system, on sale for $79.99. I'd resisted for years, but I was 63 now, and the thought of dying without any proof of August's existence bothered me more than it used to. When I showed August the camera during its next visit, it recoiled initially, suspicious of the strange device. But I took a photo of the cabin interior and showed it the developing picture. August watched in amazement as the image appeared, then wanted to see more. I took 3 photos that day. One of August sitting in the doorway, backlit by afternoon sun. One of its hand next to mine for scale. One of us both sitting side by side on the porch, taken with the camera timer. I still have those photos. They're locked in a safe deposit box in Bellingham, along with my journals. Evidence I've never shown anyone until now. August became fascinated with the concept of photographs, of capturing moments, preserving memory. It would point at old photos and then at the forest, as if asking why I didn't photograph the trees, the creek, the mountains. I guess I never thought they needed preserving, I admitted. They're always there. August shook its head, a gesture it had learned from watching me, and led me outside. For the next hour, it showed me things I'd walked past 1,000 times without really seeing. A spider's web jeweled with morning dew, the pattern of lichen on a boulder, the way light filtered through the canopy at a specific angle. Lesson 8. We photograph people because we know we'll lose them, but we ignore the world around us because we assume it's permanent. Nothing is permanent. Everything deserves attention, appreciation, remembrance. By 1992, I'd been meeting August for 19 years. The world had continued its frantic evolution. The internet was becoming a thing people talked about. Cell phones were getting smaller. Everyone was reading about something called email. But none of that touched us in the mountains. What did affect us was the increasing presence of hikers and tourists. The forest was becoming popular with weekend warriors from Seattle, people with brand new REI gear and expensive cameras looking for adventure. In July of '92, a group of college kids camped about 2 miles from my cabin. I heard them before I saw them. Loud music from a boombox, laughter, the crack of beer cans opening. They stayed for 3 days, left behind a mess of trash, and carved their initials into several trees. August showed up the day after they left, more agitated than I'd ever seen it. It led me to the campsite and stood there, gesturing at the damage, making distressed sounds I'd never heard before. The carved trees seemed to upset it most, deep gouges in the bark that would take years to heal, if they healed at all. I tried to explain. They're young. They don't think about consequences. But August wasn't buying it. It picked up a beer can and crushed it in one hand, then threw it at the ground in what I can only describe as disgust. Then it did something calculated. It walked to a tree, raised its hand as if to gouge the bark, but stopped inches away. It looked at me, making sure I was watching, then gently touched the tree instead, almost caressing it. The message, the choice to harm or not harm, is conscious. Those kids knew what they were doing, they just didn't care. Lesson 9. Cruelty and thoughtlessness aren't signs of youth or ignorance. They're choices, and humans choose destruction far more often than we choose preservation. That was the beginning of a darker period in our relationship. August was seeing more human activity in the forest, and none of it was good. Trash, vandalism, poaching, noise pollution. It was watching its world being invaded, and it couldn't understand why we were so determined to ruin everything we touched. I couldn't explain it because I didn't understand it either. In 1994, something happened that nearly ended everything. A logging company bought land 5 miles south of my property and started clear-cutting. The sound of chainsaws echoed through the mountains for months. The creek ran muddy with runoff. Animals I'd seen regularly for years disappeared. August came to the cabin in March of that year, looking different. Not just upset, but something deeper, defeated. It sat on the porch, and for the first time since I'd known it, August looked old. Not just aged, but worn down, broken. I sat beside it, and we listened to the distant sound of falling trees. "I'm sorry," I said, though the words felt worthless. "We're a destructive species. We can't seem to help ourselves." August turned to look at me with eyes that held something I'd never seen before: judgment. For the first time in 21 years, August was looking at me not as the individual, but as a representative of humanity. And humanity was found wanting. August stood, walked to the edge of the clearing, and didn't look back. It just disappeared into the forest. I didn't see it again for 8 months. The silence of those 8 months was worse than the loneliness after Martha died. At least with Martha, I'd had memories, photographs, the certainty that what we'd shared was real. With August, I started questioning everything. Had I imagined the depth of our connection? Had I projected human emotions onto a creature that was simply tolerating me? I was 66 years old, living alone in the mountains, talking to something most people believed was a hoax. Maybe I'd lost my mind years ago and just hadn't noticed. Winter of 94 into 95 was brutal. Heavy snows, temperatures dropping below zero, the kind of cold that makes your teeth ache. I spent most of January and February inside, burning through my wood supply, listening to talk radio to remind myself that other humans still existed. The logging stopped in late February. Too much snow, ground too frozen. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was the silence of a wound, of something broken that couldn't be fixed. March brought a thaw, and with it August. I was hauling water from the creek on a gray morning when I saw it standing at the far edge of the clearing, thinner than I remembered, fur matted in places, moving with obvious stiffness. We stared at each other across 60 feet of muddy ground. I set down the water buckets and waited. August approached slowly, stopping about 20 feet away. Close enough for me to see new scars on its face and arms, close enough to see how much those 8 months had aged it, how much they'd aged both of us. "I didn't think you'd come back," I said. August made a low sound, not quite the rumble of approval I knew, something sadder. It gestured at the forest around us, then at itself, then at me. Then it touched its chest over its heart and held up one finger. One, alone, the same. "Yeah," I said, my voice breaking. "We're the same. Both of us watching our worlds disappear." August sat down heavily, and I sat too, ignoring the cold mud soaking through my jeans. We sat like that for maybe an hour, two old creatures who'd somehow found each other and didn't know how to let go. Finally, August stood and gestured for me to follow. It led me deeper into the forest than I'd ever gone, to a spot about 3 miles from the cabin where the clear-cutting had stopped. The contrast was stark. On one side, ancient forest, cathedral quiet and alive. On the other, a wasteland of stumps and mud and shattered branches. August stood at the boundary between the two worlds and touched a massive Douglas fir that had been spared by maybe 50 feet. The tree was old, probably 300 years or more, its bark thick with moss and lichen. Then August walked across the boundary into the clear cut and touched a stump, same size as the living tree, probably the same age, cut down and hauled away to become 2x4s and plywood. August looked at me and I understood lesson 10, maybe the most important one August had been trying to teach me all along. Humans measure value by what we can extract, consume, profit from. We don't see the intrinsic worth of existence itself. That tree had survived 300 years of storms, fires, disease, only to be reduced to lumber because we needed cheap building materials. "We're afraid," I said aloud, trying to make sense of it. "Afraid of not having enough, of not being enough. So we take and take, thinking it'll fill whatever's empty inside us." August made a sound I'd never heard before, something between a growl and a keen raw and painful. Then it did something that broke my heart. August sat down in the clear cut, surrounded by devastation, and put its head in its hands. It was grieving, not just for the trees, but for everything, for its lost family, for the shrinking forest, for the impossibility of stopping what was coming. I sat beside August in the mud and stumps, and we grieved together. Our meetings after that day took on a different quality, less teaching, more companionship. We were two survivors clinging to something that couldn't last, both knowing it but unwilling to admit it. In the summer of 1996, I had a health scare, a small heart attack that landed me in the hospital in Bellingham for 4 days. When I got back to the cabin, August was waiting on the porch. It knew somehow. Maybe it had come by while I was gone, found the cabin empty, sensed something was wrong. August examined me carefully, touched my chest gently, where I assumed it could feel my heartbeat. Then it did something extraordinary. It lay down on the porch and positioned itself so I could lean against it, using its body as a backrest. We stayed like that for hours, August's warmth and steady breathing keeping me grounded. That's when I understood the final lesson, lesson 11. The greatest thing any creature can offer another is simple presence. Not solutions, not wisdom, not even hope. Just the willingness to stay, to be there, to witness each other's existence without trying to fix what can't be fixed. By 1997, I was 69 and August was visibly failing. Its movements were slow, labored. The silver in its fur had spread completely, and there was a wheeze in its breathing I didn't like. I was failing too. 2 more small heart episodes, arthritis so bad, some mornings I could barely make a fist, hearing mostly gone in my left ear. We were running out of time, and we both knew it. August's visits became less frequent, every few weeks instead of weekly, then once a month. When it did come, we didn't do much. Sometimes we'd sit in silence. Sometimes I'd read aloud from books, even though August couldn't understand the words. Sometimes we'd walk slowly through the forest, 2 old friends, saying goodbye to a world we'd shared. In September of 1997, August brought me something it had never offered before, a tuft of its own fur, carefully pulled and twisted into a small bundle. It placed it in my hand and closed my fingers around it. A keepsake, a memory, a way to prove, if only to myself, that this had all been real. "Thank you," I whispered, "for everything, for teaching me, for seeing me when I didn't want to be seen." August touched my face with one massive hand, gentle as a whisper, and made that rumbling sound one last time. The last time I saw August was March 15th, 1998. I remember the date because it was exactly 25 years after our first encounter. I woke that morning to find August sitting on the porch backlit by dawn. It looked terrible, emaciated, fur patchy, breathing shallow. It had come to say goodbye. I sat beside it, and we watched the sunrise together one final time. The forest was waking up around us, birds singing, a deer moving through the underbrush, the creek rushing with snowmelt, all the life we'd witnessed together for a quarter century. August reached over and took my hand, held it in both of its massive palms. We sat like that until the sun cleared the mountains. Then August stood, slower than I'd ever seen it move, and walked toward the tree line. At the edge of the clearing, it turned back one last time. It raised one hand, not a wave, more like a benediction, and then it was gone. I never saw August again. I searched for months afterward, found no body, no sign, no evidence beyond the memories and the tuft of fur I kept in a small wooden box. Maybe August had gone deep into the forest to die alone, the way many animals do. Maybe it had simply walked until it couldn't walk anymore. I'm 97 years old now. I left the cabin in 2003 when my health finally forced me into assisted living in Bellingham. The cabin's still there, falling apart, reclaimed by the forest. The property's in a land trust now. It'll never be developed or logged. People ask me why I'm telling this story now, why I waited so long. The truth is, I wasn't waiting. I was processing, trying to understand what August taught me over those 25 years. Here's what I learned, what I think August was trying to show me about humans. We've forgotten how to be present. We're always rushing, always consuming, always taking, never just being. We judge each other brutally, but we're all just trying to survive, all carrying wounds we don't show. We've separated ourselves from nature and called it progress, built complexity and called it civilization, created abstractions and called them more valuable than the real things they represent. We're capable of profound connection, but we choose isolation. We're capable of preservation, but we choose destruction. We're capable of wisdom, but we choose convenience. And yet, and this is important, we're also capable of change, of choosing differently, of seeing the world through different eyes if we're willing to sit still long enough, be quiet enough, humble enough to learn from something we don't understand. August didn't hate humans. If it had, it never would have returned after those hunters came, never would have spent 25 years teaching a stubborn old man how to see. August just wished we were better, kinder, more aware, more connected to what actually matters. I wish that too. The tuft of fur is still in my bedside table. Sometimes when the nursing home is quiet and I can't sleep, I take it out and remember. Remember sitting in the forest with something impossible. Remember being seen, fully seen, by eyes that held no judgment, only curiosity and sadness and hope. If you take anything from this story, take this. Slow down, look around, see the world, really see it before it's gone. Connect with someone different from you. Learn that value isn't about what you can extract or consume. And if you're ever in the Cascade Mountains, in the deep forest where the old trees still stand, be quiet, be respectful, be open. Because maybe, just maybe, something's watching, something that's been observing us far longer than we've been looking for it. Something that knows what we are, what we could be, and what we're choosing to become. August taught me that the biggest mystery isn't whether Bigfoot exists. It's why we, despite all our intelligence and technology and supposed superiority, are so determined to destroy the only home we've ever known. I'm 97 years old, and I still don't have an answer to that question. But I think August did.